Welcome to Voice It, a podcast showcasing people in the Clare Valley and the mid-north of South Australia who've started their own businesses from scratch and have turned them into success stories. This is a chance for them to tell you their story. I'm your host, Annabelle Homer. Most people call you Moose. Is it because it's Malcolm, or is there another reason you're called Moose?
Oh, there's many different things that could be put to it, but the first one was a lad that worked for us was Nick Ramsey, and he reckoned I looked like Marty Moose in the National Lampoon's movie, and I have Googled it. I've never found Marty Moose on there, but anyway, that stuck.
Marty Moose, Marty Moose, Marty Moose. That's me.
Couldn't help myself. A little bit of a National Lampoon's Vacation laying tribute to the famous Marty Moose, and our very own Moose is Malcolm Stanley Heinrich. He is the Managing Director of SC Heinrich and Co, a family-owned and operated company specialising in earth moving, quarrying and transporting, based here on the outskirts of Clare. The business was originally started in 1954 by StanHeinrich, Malcolm's father, and has been operated by the Heinrich family ever since. Stan retired in his 50th year in business, but remained actively involved for a further 6 years until his passing in 2010. Malcolm has been working full-time in the business since he was 15 years old. That's just over 50 years. He's worked mainly alongside his brother Robert, who most recently stepped away, and now runs the operation with his younger brother Andrew and his son Alex. Malcolm takes you through the history of his family and the business, how it all began, the highs and the absolute lows through the 1960s and 70s, the absolute transformation of the business during COVID, and his plans for the future. Enjoy this rags to riches tale with Moose Heinrich.
Life began for me in Clare. I was born in December 1958, and my mother and father, Stan and Yvonne Heinrich, they were both born in Robertstown Hospital 2 days apart and never knew each other until they were 20. So that's an interesting little thing. But for me, myself, I grew up here, went to Clare Primary, Clare High, and continued on.
Where do your parents come from?
Dad stayed on a little family farm there with his father, there was 5 children. And mother went to Kapunda and she was a nurse. And mother is Yvonne Heinrich. She was Yvonne Beryl Cruz. So Cruz, Tom Cruise, the mailman, we're directly related. That's my mum's uncle.
Wow.
So, and Dad went up at brief times in the early 50s and helped Uncle Tom and doing dam building and whatever Tom did. Tom was just a man that,
He's a legend.
Yeah, well, he asked me to go up there one day. I was only about 15, just left school, and he said, come up there, you can do fence lines on a D6 bulldozer, and I'll give you a compass, and you go 80 k's one way, and then someone will meet you, and then I'll send you off in another compass bearing. And I told Mum, and Mum said, don't you dare go up there. You'll be cooking your own food, and you'll be changing your own tyres, and you'll be out in the sticks, and there'll be no one there. And so anyway, I decided not to do that. I went into SC Heinrich and Co instead. Tom was, as his name implies through everything, he was a legend. And the film Back and Beyond was the first film played on Channel 10 when it come to first to air, and Tom used to hate it. He said, I would have to go out there and purposely get a truck bogged just for the film crew. So he was into mixed emotions about that, and then he got an MBE from the Queen, and they asked him to come down to Adelaide for the MBE presentation. He said, no, I'm too busy. Get him to send it to me.
So for those people that have never heard of Tom Cruise, he was the Outback mailman and he did the Birdsville track.
Mid-50s through to the 60s, maybe not quite the 60s, between him and Harry Ding and Monty Scobie that lives down here, or he lived down here as well. So between the three of them, there's lots of stories that Dad used to bring home, because I know how hard it was up there that Uncle Tom had to go through stuff and the heartache that they suffered. Like, there's stories of him lying under the truck, digging the truck out, and George Bell relates this. He's singing an old church song, "I'm in heaven," and while he's digging the truck out, bogged to the axles. That's the character Tom was.
And your father, you said he grew up on a farm near Riverton?
Well, Robertstown, but that's dry and dusty, terrible place. Dad died 15 years ago. After he died, we took his two sisters and two brothers out for a bus trip with the rest of the family, and we went to where the old house was. There's only bricks in the dirt there now. A little dam there that would never have held water. They had to cart water in, they had a cow, a few sheep, and did a bit of farming, but they couldn't do that anymore. That's too hard. So they went to Andrews by Spalding. Brief stay there, and then the Heinrich family moved to Auburn. Well, all the kids went to Morella School, so they walked 4 miles to the Morella School every morning after they'd done the cow. Uncle Hartley used to always tell me of a story of, if there's a certain bull in that certain paddock, we had to walk an extra half a mile because that bull would bail us up. And we never stopped hearing about the 4-mile walk to school all of our life. That was the benchmark where things sat with Dad.
And what was your father like? What relationship did you have with him?
He was strict with us boys, fair but strict. We knew when we'd done wrong, or we knew when we weren't excelling enough. His main thing was do a decent day's work for a decent day's pay, or a fair day's pay. So that was something that was fresh on his lips all the time too. But he could holler a bit and tell us off, but in hindsight, probably sometimes we deserved it.
So tell me about your brothers. So where do you fit within the family unit?
So I'm the eldest one, and then Robert come along 18 months later. He was here as a director, but he retired virtually 2 years ago, so we're still trying to work out his exit. And then we've got another brother, Andrew, who works with us. He's 5 years younger than me, so he'd be just 60 now. So Andrew was the Harley, tattoos, I'm going off and I'm going to do whatever I like, and he eventually gravitated back here, and he's one of our top operators. We get customers actually asking, "Where's Andrew? We want Andrew on our job." So Andrew's very well recognised around the district. Robert and I worked hard as directors because Mum died early. She died when I was 30, so that's very hard to take.
Oh.
So then Robert and I steered the business. Robert's a very hard worker. I was more the academic one.
So what did your mum die from?
She had her main aorta split just by the heart. They repaired it, and they used to have a 10-day rule down there after heart surgery. If you went past 10 days, you were coming home, and she died on the 10th day, renal failure. They went back and tried to fix the aorta a couple of times, but yeah, so that was one of the worst days of my life. And she did all the bookkeeping. She could sew her own clothes, sew our clothes, make clothes, cook, play the piano accordion, never learnt music. She's just one of those multi-talented ladies that everyone misses. And it's funny because a couple of months before she went to hospital, because it was very sudden, she pulled everything out of the office and she named it and numbered it and tied it up and put it all back in the office. And I said, "What are you doing all that for?" She said, "Oh, I just think it's time." And we never thought any more of it. So 2 or 3 months later, she ended up in Adelaide Hospital and died. So my wife at the time, Julianne, had to sit down with her with a biro, and that's how we did our books, all with a biro, and we had to pick up from where Mum left off. And it sort of was easy because Mum prepared for it, not knowing that she was going to die. So I think there's a 6th or 7th sense out there somewhere.
Tell me about your father and the establishment of SC Heinrich. How did all that come to be?
Well, Dad did lots of things in his youth. His first stint at Clare worked for a man called Merv Henschke. In 1954, he actually started the business that runs today. So 1954, he traded his old Triumph motorbike in and he bought an old Dodge truck from Merv Henschke, and that was the start of SC Heinrich and Company. And he had to buy a shovel as well because he didn't have a loader. So he would go out to the Broughton River, Kalunga, Magpie Creek at Brinkworth, and he would dig sand and gravel out of the creeks and throw it up onto the bank and then throw it onto the truck. He would go and throw it off because it wasn't a tipper, so at the customers. So 3 times he would have shovelled, and sometimes I'd get clever and back the truck down into the creek, and then they'd get stuck. So then they shovel the load off before they even went anywhere and got the truck out. So he gradually grew along. He bought an RD4D Caterpillar dozer and a little Fordson loader, and that was the modernisation of getting from the shovel to somewhere a bit more pleasant. So,
did he ever talk to you about why he did that in the first place and why he went into earth moving and that industry?
Probably because preparing the horses to do everything they did on the farm, he probably hated the horses and decided there's got to be a better way. And Mum used to say, if it hasn't got wheels, it's not worth owning. So our family didn't follow along with the horses very well. My Auntie Betty Fidge, she continued the horses on, but not the rest of the family, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, maybe.
How was he able to do that financially? Because back in those days, how much did machinery cost?
Actually, the thing that probably got him involved is Grandpa Cruz, Herb Cruz at Waterloo had trucks. Tom Cruz had trucks. Cousin Noel Weeks from Kaibunga at that stage had trucks. Snow and Skin Cruz had mechanical workshop down past Tail and Bend, Meningie. And then Waterloo had the Bluchers, they had trucks. So he had trucks around him all the time. So in the early days, he'd sow bags of wheat. He'd cart hay off of farms for other people. And that's stooked hay, like with a pitchfork and throwing it up on the truck. And then they went to small bales. And he did all of Calcanya's, Hawker's family out here. Calcanya, we did all their carting. So that Willie Hawker, the great old man of Willie Hawker, the original Calcanya Hawker, looked after Dad very well. They worked hard. I suppose in them days to us now, they didn't get paid much, but they got paid a lot for those days. On my day of my birth, Willie Hawker come out to the hay shed because Willie didn't do much manual work himself. Probably behind the scenes he did, but Willie come out to the hay shed and said to Dad, "Stanley, you're wanted in at the hospital. You've just had a boy. You might as well knock off now and don't worry about coming back for the rest of the day. But make sure you're here tomorrow morning." Yeah, the days with the Hawkers, that was the start of Dad getting a fair shot at something. Then Merv Henschke worked in with Neil Shell, which is Jeff Shell's father, and Neil Shell had trucks as well. Everywhere we looked at had wheels on it was trucks. So that's the way it was. When he started as SC and YB Heinrich, it was then. So Stanley Clarence and Yvonne Beryl.
As a kid, you grew up in that environment. What did you think of what your dad was doing? And when did you realise, yeah, that's what I want to do?
We used to cart a lot of grain, so when Mum would go out in the paddocks, either take tyres out or pick the drivers up at night, and us boys were allowed to sit on Mum's lap and steer the ute. And then we gradually start driving around the paddock and then drive the trucks around the paddock and move them up when they're loading the grain. And so, yeah, we just sort of evolved into it. It's got to be in your blood because we never thought anything other than that. We went to school, but every holiday or every weekend we would go out in the trucks or would jump on a front end loader or something. So we were mucking around with our first Caterpillar loader we bought in 1968. We've still got it here on the property, actually.
Oh, really?
Every opportunity, me anyway, I couldn't get enough of it. We had little Tonka toys and we had a sand pit down by the shed and we built bridges, and Robert, me and Andrew would be there, and if I had one toy, Andrew wanted it and he'd grab it and then I'd tell him off, and then Robert would say, well, I'm going to have it anyway, and then, yeah, so then eventually we got enough toys to share, but it was hard times. Like, I remember our first Malvern Star bike we got for Christmas, but it was a Malvern Star bike for 3 boys and they had to share it. So you can imagine how that worked. So eventually I went off and I actually made bikes. I had a mate that lived up by the rubbish dump side. We used to get bike frames and stuff, and we made our own dragsters and billy carts and stuff. So after school, if Mum didn't know where we were, she would have a fair old guess that I was up the dump with the girder boys.
So you were pretty good with your hands. You were a good tinkerer. You knew how to build stuff even from a young age.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Much to Dad's disgust, I pulled the lawnmower to bits one day, right back to the crankshaft, and put it back together. And it worked, but it was never the same. And Dad said, "Oh, no, there's all this oil on the concrete here for?" And I said, "Oh, I just pulled the lawnmower to bits." "What did you do that for?" "I wanted to see how it works." He wasn't too happy with that one. But then, as time went on, we didn't have mobile phones them days, so when I started running the business, I lived at the business out in this house where we are now. I should never have lived at the business as long as I did, because the shed was always across there, and I would have workmen in the morning to get to work, and then I would have workmen at night wanting to know what to do next morning or where they've got to, and then I'd have tea sometimes, or evening meal, probably 8, 9 o'clock, and then I'd go over the shed lots of nights, and I'd work there till 10, 11, 12, sometimes 1 or 2 o'clock, and I would work over there because we didn't have mechanics in days, so I'd be fixing hoses or tyres or welding something up on the truck that's broke, or putting a new spring leaf in or something. It's just the way it was. Too many things happening even back then. So because I lived here, I copped it all. So
is that a regret that you have?
No, not at all.
Not at all?
No, I would probably...
If you had your time again, you'd do it all again?
I might have done some things smarter. I might not have hurt myself as much. But
oh, did you?
Oh, yeah, sometimes you got into trouble because you try and do things too much at once and you slip or you have an accident and stuff, or the old days you hit your thumb so you didn't do it again, but these days no one's allowed to hit their thumb, so they don't know how it hurts. And our drivers all learnt by just experience. Like, you start off in an old truck and work your way up. It's not like that these days. Young fellas just get chucked in a 600 horsepower truck with 2 trailers on the back, and here, have a go at that. So we did it tough.
Let's take a step back to your dad. And, he started with the bare basics and he's built this business up over what period of time? How long did he work in the business before he passed away?
Well, he passed away March 2010. He'd had, over the 10 years previous to that, he'd run himself down a bit. Then he got lymphomia. He actually got better from that. It was a good lymphomia. So the chemo nearly killed him. So he went off of that, but he come good. One of his blessed moments was John Howard visited Clare, and Dad looked like death warmed up, but he was so glad that he could stand next to John Howard and have his photo taken. It's photos around here somewhere. He thought that was it in a bit, but then... yeah, after surviving all of that, and then he'd retired by that stage. So,
How much had he built up the business over that time, from 1954 to 2010?
Well, he built it to the point of when Mum died. When Mum died, that killed him. Those two were so much in love. And
what year did she die?
1989. So, and I was 30 years old. So that's a lot to take in, and then we were...
So he wasn't the same after that?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't domesticated in any way at all, so Auntie Betty Fidge, she would come up with an evening meal and see how she's going, and Auntie Betty's still alive, and I go down there and see her a bit these days, because I return the favour, and I quite often say that that's much appreciated what you did for Dad. So after Mum died, Dad still worked. Dad worked till probably 2003, and then he started... we find him on the bulldozer and he was asleep, or else he'd hit something on the way home. So we just had to say, oh, come on, enough's enough. Yeah. He took it easier after that. He never ever wanted to take anything easier. Defeat wasn't his personality. But when Mum died, that's when Robert and I really kicked in, and that's when Dad had got it to the stage, like coming up through the 50s and the 60s, and I remember the 60s and the early 70s where it was hard times. We didn't have money, and we would have 3 months before we could pay our fuel bill, and we'd wait till every harvest come around because that was a big influx of money, and you'd pay everything off, and then you go back through winter again. Winters were very lean on work. It's nothing seasonal about winter here, and we weren't as heavily into earth moving and quarrying and stuff as what we are these days. These days we don't do much seasonal stuff at all these days, but that back then was seasonal. And the tyre companies, the fuel companies, they would let you go for 3 months, 4 months, because that's just the way it worked back then. So we got through. Dad used to like try and buy new trucks. Didn't always work, but I remember he bought 2 Commas and a Leyland all at once in 1967, I reckon it was, or 69. So he bought 3 trucks in one hit. The regret I have is we didn't go for bigger trucks early enough. We stuck with the old stuff for too long. Right up until the mid-70s, we just didn't seem to get ahead. We just continued doing stuff the tough old way.
Why didn't you get bigger trucks back in those days?
I think it was complacency, too eager to do it the hard way. I can remember when I first started driving, and if we went out to Kalunga, we had a very good sand deposit in the Broughton River out there. It's pretty much only a bit of loam there now, but if the loader broke down, we were expected to load a truck by hand with a shovel and not drive home empty. That's a good incentive to get things going.
So was it under your direction that you went more into quarrying and not do so much seasonal work?
With the little sand and gravel quarry out at Kalunga, that was sort of in our blood, and we did lots of sand and metal supplies for all the vertical concrete silos around the place for what's now Viterra, but we used to supply Dillingham Construction Company with sand and metal, and we carted all, thousands of tons in 9-ton loads. It's just crazy. So the last one of them we did was at Jamestown, and I worked on the crew on night shift up there once we'd had all the sand and gravel made, and it's good memories, good people, but tough bloody work. There was rail carriages there with 30 tonne of cement each end of the railway carriages, and the carriages were 80 feet long, I think. So we'd have to carry the cement to the door in the middle, put it on the front end loader bucket, then cut the bags open, and then empty the bags into the loader bucket and tip it into the plant. So that was another fun thing we used to do. And me and a mate, Mark Cotts, would get a bit smart some days because I did a lot of ready mix work, and we'd have a little bit of a race. We'd pick up 2 cement bags at a time, and who could do their end of the loader bucket the quickest wins. But we didn't win anything, just went to the pub afterwards. So the stupid things we did, and like a cement bag back then was 40 kilograms, so we'd lift 80 kilograms at a time, but we only did that for a 5-minute sprint. So
do you reflect back on those times and then think about what you're doing now and go, is business easier these days, or it's just harder in a different way?
Well, there's different ways to look at different things, like cement bags now. I think they're only 20 kilograms, and they've got dissolving wrappers on them. They can throw the whole bag in the concrete mixer. So that's just for handyman stuff, but no one would even do handyman stuff anymore these days. You just, even for 1 or 2 cubic metres of concrete, they just bring up the plant. Ready Mix will bring it out, or whoever. Clare Quarries drop out 2 metres rather than someone go and mixing it by a hand through the concrete mixer. So that's changed. Lots of people curse phones, but I love the phone because they have instant answers. You can knock off when you go home. I used to field phone calls till 11 o'clock at night and then have it going at 6 o'clock in the morning again. That was from grain customers or grape cartage. We used to do a lot of grape cartage from the Riverland down to here, plus all the local stuff around here. We sold our grape run 4 years ago to a subby of ours. All the nice wineries got taken over by nice multinationals now, the big ones that we were carting for, And it got to, you will do this, and it's not, the old days of, oh, can you do this? So, yeah, they just got us offside there one year, and they expected us to put more infrastructure in for less payment. So they said, that's what you have to do. And we said, we don't have to do that. Well, sorry, we resign. That ended from 54 through to 4 years ago, we ended grape cartage. And Dad knew when he was alive, we were tempted to quit it a few times. And now with mechanical picking all hours of the night, you're a 24-hour service. You get held up at the winery, so the trucks are always late. You don't know where anyone is, and that's the biggest load off of our mind. So that ended a real historical thing, because when Clare Valley Wine Company was here, that was Dad's first big contract of carting for the co-op from Barmera down to here, and Loxton, and a bit from Waikerie. So we would take 3 hours in an old comma and a trailer to go up to Barmera. It was all hand-loaded. We would start off with 6 trucks and trailers in Clare in the morning. So we'd fork all that off by hand. So then we'd drive up. Probably the last one would leave 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock to go up the river. And they'd finish picking about 4. So you go and manually load hand load the grapes. So if you're lucky, you get away from the riverland at 7, 8 o'clock. So 3 hours up, but it's 5 hours back in an old comma. So we'd pull up at the Sutherland's pub. We'd always have a couple of beers there and have a tea, have a meal there. And the publican, he was just fantastic. We'd go out the back and cook our own tea half the time, and probably had a couple too many beers, but some nights it would be 100 degree days, over 40 degrees, and we've been up there loading bloody grapes. They're all sitting on Hessian bags. One bloke either corner, like 2 hands, one corner each, and 2 blokes would throw the Hessian bag up into the truck, and there'd be another 3rd bloke up there to catch the bag in mid-flight, and then throw that bag back down onto the ground, and then the people would come along and you pick the bags up and take it to the next crop that was to be picked. The trucks were driving up the rows of the vineyard, and we were throwing it from one row across the vines up into the truck. I was lucky, I was the youngest one, so I got to throw the bags off, the empty bags.
Oh, you got the easy part.
Yeah, finally got little forklifts on the farm tractors, and you'd still throw the bags into the forklift, and then they'd bring the forklift out to the truck. But the old grape growers would probably try and get 3/4 of a tonne into a half-tonne bin, and they got the forklift up in the air and they're smashing into the side of your truck, and yeah, it wasn't happy days.
Oh, in that time when your father stepped back and you and your brother took over, was that a super challenging time for you, or you pretty much had been working in the business for a fair amount of time by that stage, so the transition was quite seamless?
We were already there, ready to go. We were used to the hard work. It's funny to try and work out how which bits went. You said about the crushing, the earth moving and quarries and stuff like that. We got to the stage where Kirribilli, Sean Edwards and Rob Stanway had started off, and Schrober's Road vineyard down at Auburn had so much limestone rock there, and they didn't know what to do with it. And I said to Sean one day, I said, well, there's mobile rock crushers now on tracks, and they're very expensive. I think the very basic one that we were looking at was $500,000 then, and that was for about a 30-tonne machine, and that will crush it. It won't crush it down to council standard or Department of Transport standard, but it'll get rid of your pile of rock, and you can do all your internal roads in the vineyard. And Sean said, that's a brilliant idea. And he said, what's stopping you? I said, well, money. It's $500,000. And he said, don't be stupid, do it. And I went home and told Dad that night, and I still remember Dad standing on the veranda out the back. And I said, Sean Edwards said, just do it. He's got all this rock to crush, just do it. And Dad said, well, I don't know what you're waiting for, boy. If I was your age, I'd be doing it. So that was a venturing of our first rock crusher on tracks, a mobile rock crusher. I think we've got about 37 pieces of those items now, screens, crushers and what have you. Some of them are up to about nearly 60 tonne a piece. and we mix and match them, and we can make any quarry product we like. So we do a lot of council work, state government works. We do work for other quarries. We've got about 15.
So it really opened up the market for you.
Absolutely. We've got about 15 of our own leases, some pretty agricultural leases, but we just campaign crushing in our own quarries, and then that goes out to our earth moving jobs or whoever wants to buy it. And once again, Grandpa Cruz, Herbert Cruz, and his son, my mother's brother, Howard Cruz, they had a big rock crushing plant over at Waterloo. So that was sort of, let's do that.
So what other major improvements have you done over the years, or value-adding additions, I guess, that you've made over the years?
The progression of trucks from commas and Leylands to, we went through and standardised on Scanias now. An old bloke, he's still alive. I seen him at David Bowley's funeral the other day at Port Broughton, and that's Harvey Stringer, and he'd paid $500 deposit on a Scania, and he had a Kenworth, and then he decided, I don't want 2 trucks. So he said, take over the deposit, and you can have this truck. And it was only good, it's a $15,000 truck back then. So that was our first step of standardising into Scanias, and that was 300 horsepower truck, and we were just blown away by it. We continued buying Scanias. That original one that was painted red, Robert pulled up at house at Mum's place for lunch one day, had lunch, and the neighbour come in and said, your truck's alight. So that one burnt next to the house.
Oh.
So that one only lasts a few years.
That's a bit unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, well.
How often does that happen?
Well, not very often. It was a truck with a gear lever hole through the cab was worn out. So Robert had his jumper stuck down there, and we think that caught a light. Jumper or a bag or something, just to stop the hot air coming in. That got us up into a better class of truck, and then we got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now we have 730 horsepower ones towing 2 and 3 trailers, full-blown road trains.
So how many trucks do you have altogether now?
About, including some little ones, water trucks and little tippers, probably about 35. The main core group is probably about 15 that go out, like road trains and truck and dogs, carting in earnest.
Amongst all this and developing the business and growing the business, you got married and you had a family. How many kids do you have?
So I got 4 children. Had a beautiful wife, Julianne, and we eventually broke up, but that was 27 years later, but I'd been with her for 32 years in total. In 1980 we got married. 4 lovely kids. So Carly was number 1, and then followed by Sally Ann, Samuel, and then Alexander. So they've all had a stint in the business. They all went to Clare High School, Clare Primary School. They come out of there very, very well adjusted and very, very clever, I think. So Carly spent a bit of time in the business here. Sally Ann did her own thing for a while, and then she spent a couple decades here as chief administrator. Sam spent a lot of time going off exploring. He worked at Holden's and then in some mines, and then he come back here 10, 12 or something. Time flies so quick. And then Alexander, the young fellow that was into everything, he's the 4th one, so he's just mini me. He's flat out, he's got the energy I used to have, so he's the one that's lining up to take all this on. So, and I guess the other kids might grow. Well, I'll drop dead one day, so Alex will need some help, so maybe they'll all gravitate back, and I'm hoping that SC Heinrich and Company will treat all of my children very well, as it has for me. So it's been a nice life, tough in times, but you wouldn't change it. I was too busy out working, and I didn't get to too much of the sports with the kids. I did and I didn't. I just only when it was convenient, and I regret that. As I got older, I did more with going to sport. But we were hard working. We had to get some money because it was just so hard to make a living back then. And then,
but it's turned out to be quite a successful business. It
turned out, yeah. My kids all got to the stage where they bought their own car and bought their own house out of the affairs of what was happening, and they've had a lot easier life than me, Robert and Andrew had with Mum and Dad.
So tell me about the business today. How many people are employed here at SC Heinrich and Co, and just the nature of the business?
We got up to in the 80s, probably 9 people was the most. Over the last few years now, the last 3 years, we've had 40. We thought COVID, we worked how many months we could go without having any money coming in, because we thought we were going to die a miserable death, like business-wise. And then it worked in reverse. All the money investment the government did for the roadworks, we'd never been busier. So we scaled right up to 40 people. We had subbies, we had road trains, we had 18 road trains running just months after months, 1 year's worth of carting about 1 million tonne in 1 year. Unheard of. So COVID buttoned off a bit, the change of government and the money dried up for roads now. So we had a lot to do with the duplication over at Lockhill, that finished, and a lot to do at the Goyder South wind farm at Burra. So both of them finished pretty much on the dot last financial year. So we had too many blokes. So we put it out there, and we had 4 retired and 1 left. So we've dropped 5. We're back to 35 now, but we didn't actually get quieter. We're still busy.
That's good.
So,
and do you struggle to get staff?
It is very hard to get multitaskers. Mechanical staff, like mechanics straight out, are just very hard to get good ones. We got 5 mechanics in the shed there now. The constant threat of mines taking people away. So we've actually had to pay the mechanics mind-blowing figures here that I've never ever thought I'd pay. But what do? We either pay for in-house mechanics and have 5 of them in there, and we've got them at different levels, or we've got to farm the work out to, say, Caterpillars or Scanias or whatever, or freelance mechanics that come and charge $160 an hour. So our in-house mechanics work very well, just got to look after them. Same with office staff.
Yep.
They're all paid over and above because they do a good job.
How old are you, Malcolm?
66.
60.
Last December.
Oh, he's still a baby.
I am. I'm nearly grown up. I'm getting there.
So do you have an exit strategy, or you're just going to see what happens?
Well, I always thought I was going to live forever, but that's not an option, I'm told. So, no, I just figure that I'm not the retiring type. I guess I just figure I'll just drop dead one day and they'll put me in the ground.
You've been in this game for over 50 years. In that time, what do you think has probably been the most significant challenge, or even just some of the hardest times, if you can recall a time when it was just really tough?
Yeah, I think the constant threat in the earlier years of trying to borrow money and pay it back and trying to get that adjusted in theory and practice and in your head, all coordinated, so that, like, we had trouble paying our loans off some years when you have a bad harvest. And I can remember in the 60s and 70s, and there was, people had 2 bags an acre crop, and then we would have nothing to cart. That was hard times doing that, and the farmers suffered. Growing practices these days, even a drought this year, they get better returns, even though it was pretty bad in spots this year. But I remember back in drought years, and then 3 or 4 years later, the crops just took off. Then they had wheat quotas, so you couldn't deliver more than what you said you was going to grow. So that was a hard time of farmers trying to place grain that they grew and didn't know it was going to grow that good. We had quite a few grain trucks running, so we would have different posts around the area with a rock on the top, and that's where we would leave notes of, yes, you go to this next paddock, or you take that next load from his place down to Ardrossan and not to Wallaroo. So that was our message system, was notes on tops of posts. So when you're coming back from the silo empty, it was mandatory that you stopped at the post at, say, Wendland's place or Williams's place and check out the post. So that's the first posts before Facebook.
Yeah. Out of everything that you've done, Moose, what are you super proud of?
Super proud of was having Juliana as my wife and having 4 kids. That it doesn't matter whether I went to every sport game or whatever, but I just love the fact that they all went through school, no druggies, no crap. Julianne was the best mother for them. She's passed on now nearly 2.5 years ago now. But I said before, I was always working because we needed money, but I always had money to give to Julianne, and we always had money to do what we had to do, and Julianne was always there to take the kids to school, pick them up from school, take them to sport, but the kids never ever wanted for anything.
What's a piece of advice that you kind of wish that you knew back in the day you would have done differently?
I think the best piece of advice is don't wing it. Go and get advice. Go and talk to someone who's got a business and find out all the pitfalls, because there's many. And I would hate to start off again now, I would have hated to start off again 20 years ago. But now there is help there. You can ring up consultants, other employers. You can actually Google how to start a business in South Australia, and it'll tell you all the things you've got to do, the mandatory things. And that is so necessary to know exactly what you've got to do. Just simple things like insurances and what you do with your money and ABNs and your tax. If you don't address all your tax correctly, and I pride myself on paying all of our creditors and the tax department, if you get over ambitious, and I've seen this where someone's taken on too much and then they fall in a heap because they just didn't budget. So I think get help before you start. And most people will start doing something that they know and they like. That's the other thing. Make sure you like what you're doing. Don't go chasing something because you think, there's a lot of money there to be made, but I don't really like it. But if you don't like it, you're not going to last at it. Yeah, and don't cheat anyone, because if you think you can go in and cream someone in the first year or so of business, and then they find out, I just got stung by that bloke, or else the bloke hasn't done his job properly because he didn't know the job. Those two scenarios, if you don't know your job or if you rip someone off, you're not going to be there. You're just going to be by the wayside. Like what you do and do it honestly. And that's Dad's motto, and that's still in my head, and that's what I tell my kids.
Well, Moose, it has been an absolute pleasure to hear your story and to meet you, because we've never met.
No,
and it's
the famous Annabelle Homer. I used to love listening to you on the radio.
Well, there you go. It's famous Moose Heinrich now, because now I know all about you. And the fact you were related to Tom Cruise, which, I remember doing stories on him back in the day.
I'm actually impressed that so many people have told me to search you out, and especially the wine growers guys. I know most of them, and I lived my life through. I was probably 10 and 20 years younger than all those wine growers that you interviewed.
On the Grape Growers Untold podcast.
That's right, on that podcast. And that was it in a bit for me to hear about all those times, and I was there and I lived all that. I never knew that I would be old enough, and I don't know where the time went so quick, but old enough to sit here and tell my life story to someone. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Moose, for being so generous with your time and being so honest about business life. There's so much that Moose talked to me about as part of this episode, but I couldn't include it all. He needs his own podcast series with the amount of knowledge and experience he has under his belt. Catch you next week for another episode of the Voice It podcast featuring the fabulous and super creative Nikki White from Mickaloo. Just before I sign off, a little bit about me and my business, Voice It. It's a communications business specialising in public speaking training, media training, podcasting, audio memoir production and MC work. I'm passionate about giving people the skills to be effective, engaging and memorable communicators, not just on stage, but in life. In general conversation. I'm a former ABC broadcast journalist and also have 12 years experience in AMB speech and drama. I use those skills to bring you engaging and fun workshops and recording sessions to make you feel at ease and enjoy the process, because I get it. Public speaking can be daunting, but it doesn't have to be. Also, I'm happy to toot my own horn here. This year, I was a finalist in the AgriFutures Rural Women's Award in South Australia. A fantastic experience I encourage any woman to pursue if they have a business idea or a project that can make a difference to regional communities. That's enough about me. I'm Annabelle Homer. I'll catch you very soon for another episode of the Voice It podcast.